expand our imagination.
Justification for being what you are.
Welcome to Washington Unplugged. I'm Jan Crawford. President Obama hosted another backyard chat aimed at reconnecting with middle-class voters. But is that strategy working, and are there any potential risks? Politic365.com's Charles Ellison, Rock the Vote's Heather Smith, and our own Mark Knoller, who's traveling with the president right now in Des Moines, Iowa, later today in Richmond, Virginia, all join me to discuss. Mark, I'm going to start with you because you're out there. Tell us the latest. I saw you tweeted earlier today that the president is saying these are not campaign events, so what are they?
Well, you know, he did in fact say that. He has been taking some hits that these events, which the White House says are non-political but official, that he uses them to make and try and score political points. And right at the top of his latest backyard chat today here in Des Moines, he said, although there's a midterm election coming up, he'll try to avoid a straight political speech. And he was able to keep that pledge for about 3 minutes. The president got into talking about the economy, and he said that the other side, meaning Republicans, are offering the same policies that for the years of the Bush presidency put off hard problems and didn't really speak honestly to the American people. Well, clearly he's making a political point there. But the president and the White House feel that these outings, and today was this event here in Des Moines was his 5th backyard chat over the last couple of months. They feel it gives President Obama a chance to show that he is concerned about the problems of middle-class Americans. He wants to hear their concerns, and he wants to show that he's reaching out to them and trying to address the problems that they raised with him.
Well, now, let me ask you this, first of all. I mean, how do you get to have your backyard, you know, be the spot for one of these events? I mean, who are these families? And what is it, a lottery? I mean, does the White House find them?
Well, a top White House aide said on Monday that the families agreeing to host these backyard events are chosen by the White House at the recommendation of local Democratic officials, mayors, or members of Congress. There are people who are known to be friendly to the president and his policies. You know, they're not going to any Tea Party outings on these events. But the White House also says that the audience members, most of whom are neighbors of the family chosen to host these events, are not screened or handpicked and can pretty much ask whatever they like. Today, the president faced questions from a parent whose son is struggling to find a job. Another individual wanted to know when all the money the U.S. is spending in Iraq and Afghanistan can be used on for domestic issues. Still another person was asking about the poverty rate. The latest Census Bureau report showed 1 in 7 in the U.S. are in poverty. Mr. Obama said it was unacceptably high. And he said the single most important thing he can do to drive poverty down is to grow the economy. So he's getting a wide variety of questions, and the White House is delighted with this kind of event for the president. And certainly coming in advance of the midterm elections in 5 weeks, they think that it certainly puts him, his administration, and the Democrats in a position to try and minimize the losses that they are expected to suffer on November 2nd.
But, you know, it sounds like, I mean, it sounds almost like, you know, kind of a neighborhood block party, you know, on a street that's got a bunch of peace signs on the cars and nuclear-free zones. I mean, how is this going to resonate with everyone if these people are handpicked, they're friendly, or it sounds kind of staged?
Well, to a certain extent it is. You know, they don't want the president being subjected to harsh questioning, but some of the questions over the past 5 events, some of them have been pointed. Yesterday, Mr. Obama got a pointed question about his position on abortion, and he explained that. I can't remember the last time he was asked about abortion. So he does get some pointed questions, but it's delivered in a friendly atmosphere. And certainly the president is going out of his way to show that whatever questions are raised, he's man enough to face up to them and provide an answer in a collegial spirit.
With some friendly friends. All right, so later today on to Virginia, more of the same. Is that what we're expecting? Just a different location?
A different location. Today, this morning's event in Des Moines, he was the guest of Jeff and Sandy Club. Jeff is a social studies and religion teacher at a local Catholic school, and his wife, Sandy, is athletic director at Drake University. And their home was very beautiful, a two-story colonial. They've got a nice big backyard.
Well, wait, but how was that backyard? Beautifully landscaped, I bet.
It's larger than most backyards you might want to see. It's large enough to accommodate the press and 70 guests and tents for reporters to work in. So it's pretty large.
All right. Well, Mark, I know you've got to get busy and go back to reporting and filing. So thanks a lot for the update, and we will look forward to talking to you soon.
You bet, Jan.
Thanks. All right. Now, joining me to discuss all this again is Charles Ellison from Politic365.com. And Heather, thank you from Rock the Vote. Let me start with you, Heather. I mean, is this going to work? I mean, this strategy of kind of trying to reconnect with the middle class by going into their backyards, and I mean, but first of all, too, like, what if you live in a brownstone when you don't have a backyard? I mean, there seems like there could be, for city people, this could be somewhat biased.
Yeah, you know, it depends what it's working for, right? Will it work to convey the message that, yes, the president is out listening to concerns again and talking to people directly, that the president is, you know, speaking to them and taking these questions? Yes. Will that work to increase turnout in the midterm elections? Well, I don't really know. I mean, we saw him last night at the University of Wisconsin in Madison speaking to students. They came out in droves.
Mm-hmm. I saw it was 17,000.
Well, that was during the campaign. It was like 26,000. So even more than came out in 2008. They are hungry for leadership and hungry to hear directly from the president and engage with him again. But that's the president. He's not running for office in 2000 or in 2010.
Right. Are these college kids going to get up and get out of bed and vote in November when he's not on the ballot? And if you can't turn them out in Madison, Wisconsin, I mean, you know, talk about a friendly town.
You know, I'll try to kind of keep it real here for a minute, or keep it 100, as folks back in the neighborhood say. I think, one, this is all about 2012. I mean, as far as the president going out and stumping, also he has his wife, Michelle Obama, is also out there stumping for vulnerable House Democrats. Also want to be a little bit of a cynic and go out on a limb here.
Oh, no, no cynicism allowed on this.
I think that I don't know if it's the president himself, but I definitely think that there are people within his political team that want Democrats to lose the House. I think it sets the stage for Barack Obama getting reelected in 2012. And I think that that's one of the reasons why earlier on in the year he wasn't really stumping as aggressively for House Democrats. He was stumping very heavily for the Senate because he has that personal professional connection. But I think really it could actually be to his advantage if Democrats lose.
How so?
Well, one, if you have, it sets the stage for him looking like this guy, the president who's backed in the corner. He's like the fighting proletariat, and hey, you know, here I'm trying to do all this great, wonderful stuff for you people, and Republicans got my hands tied behind my back. They got me in a corner. They're investigating me all over the place. He can make the Republicans look very ineffective if they take the majority, and it'll be a very slim majority.
It'd be a narrative of, you know, the Republicans are like, no, we can't. No, we can't.
We can't do anything. You know, they're all stuck in these investigations because already you've had ranking Republicans on various House committees, like Darrell Issa, for example, from California, saying, yes, we're going to investigate this administration. I think people in the White House are looking forward to that. So, you know, yes, it's a little bit of a cynical worldview, but I think that that's what they want to go for. Another thing, I don't know how this strategy of, you know, sort of chiding Democratic voters and saying, hey, stop whining. I don't know if that really works. I think that they should stick with what Deval Patrick is saying up in Massachusetts. He's saying, hey, listen, in 2008, we changed the guard. Now, in 2010, we need to guard the change. And I think if they go with something like that, I think that could resonate with voters a little bit more. But, you know, as I'm saying, I don't think they really want Democrats to take the House. I really don't.
Do you agree with that?
Well, I don't know that I do. I mean, to have the president out there stumping, talking to students, going out on the campaign trail, talking to these voters, and then lose the election You know, to me that seems a little bit strange, but I would agree with you that, you know, the message of, you know, excuses and politics and filibusters and pointing fingers and partisan bickering, that's what's turned people off from this conversation over the past 2 years.
But how does that help? I mean, picking up on Charles' point, I mean, how does it help when the leaders of the party and of the country start berating people for whining? I mean, that's almost like nobody wants to be lectured to. I mean, my kids certainly never want to hear it.
Exactly, and we've been hearing from young people all over the country going, you know, thank you, this is great, but where have you been? Right? We worked really hard for this change too, right? We volunteered millions of hours, we knocked on millions of doors, and after the election, while a lot of great things happened here in DC, out in the country where people are struggling with their own very real lives, they felt a little bit leaderless in a way. And so to have the president back out there talking to them, great, but we describe it at Rock the Vote like you went out on a really great first date, but you got a text message back 2 years later. So the sexiness might be a little bit, you might be a little bit more skeptical and wondering, are we just a pawn in your game to win another election? Or are you really talking about our real lives, the fact that, I mean, shoot, unemployment for young people has tripled since 2008.
But are you really getting that sense? I mean, that the young vote, which obviously they need desperately in the midterms and in 12, that they are feeling kind of like they were sold out or that they were used? Or I mean,
yeah,
how would you?
Rock the Vote just did a national poll of young people, and about a third said, you know, they're disappointed in the, you know, in the Obama and the pace of change. About a third said they're pleased, but it was that third in the middle that said, yeah, the jury's still out. We're going to wait and see. And what we're, you know, and then 83% still optimistic that as a generation they can change this country,
which is a wonderful thing. Actually,
it is,
in the middle of
they're
a
like
terrible.
Hungry to participate.
I think a big part of the problem too is the fact that historically, midterms, people just aren't paying attention. You know, people aren't plugged into the process. They're not plugged into the politics that's taking place with congressional midterms, and that's a big problem as far as the youth vote as well. The youth vote is energized, and everybody's paying attention during a presidential cycle. And so, you know, and one thing that I do like about this president, what he's been doing since he's been in office, is he's been trying to provide like a great big civics lessons for everyone. He's trying to tell people, hey, there's a lot more to this process beyond the vote. There's a lot of other stuff going on. I want you to learn more about it. And I think that's why you have young voters getting a bit disenchanted after a presidential election, because they want to see all this change, and then they forget about the fact, because a lot of people just have this lack of knowledge about the process, that, yeah, in 2 years there's going to be a congressional midterm as well.
Yeah, well, and you're also seeing that they're paying more attention because of their engagement in 2008 and seeing how politics works,
which
right?
maybe not is always a good thing.
You a little bit worried about.
And so I guess now, like, to end it on this, you know, well, 2 years later you get the text, so it's going to take a little work to get a second date.
Yeah, but I think you talk about principle over politics, and people are ready to get back in the game.
All right, we're going to have to end it at that. Heather Smith, Charles Ellison, thanks so much. We'll look forward to having you guys back as we get closer to November. Thanks a lot. And now, when Freakonomics hit bookshelves a few years ago, it was an instant bestseller. A book melding pop culture and economics. Now Freakonomics is hitting movie theaters, and our own Kaylee Hartung caught up with filmmaker Chad Troutwine for the DC premiere. Take a look.
So we're joined now by Chad Troutwine, instrumental in turning Freakonomics, the wildly popular book, into a movie. Thanks for joining us.
That's my pleasure.
So tell me, this isn't your traditional book-to-movie story. How did you guys come up with the idea to turn this book into a movie?
Yeah, it was too expensive for me to buy a novel, and so no, I think, like a lot of producers who want to see a literary work come to the screen, I was really moved, and every medium is different. So I wanted more people to learn about Freakonomics and Freakonomic thinking than had read the book. And even though more than 4 million people ended up getting the book, you know there are a lot of people who just don't read anymore. And I think that's okay. And that doesn't mean that they should be constrained to just you know, intellectually vacant films. So our book is a way to celebrate, or our film is a way to celebrate the book and to invite people in who almost read the book.
So what challenges did you find in turning, you know, a theoretical economics book into a movie?
From the very beginning, we wanted to do two things that could have been at odds with one another, and that is make it completely accessible, a truly entertaining film, while at the same time not dumbing down any of the material. So we wanted to be academically and intellectually honest to what Steve Levitt and Stephen Dubner created, but draw in as many people as we could. So to do that, we knew we had to make it really engaging and really entertaining. And so those were some of the challenges. And also, this is a different kind of film. Rather than using a single director, we used different directors to take on challenging and controversial material from the book. So in a way, it's like 5 films in one. There are 4 distinct segments, and then a 5th segment directed by Seth Gordon, who weaves together all the other 4 segments. Our main segments are directed by Academy Award nominees and Academy Award winners and Sundance winners, well-known filmmakers Morgan Spurlock, Rachel Grady and Heidi Ewing, Alex Gibney, and the brilliant Eugene Jarecki. And so one of the challenges was, can we put together something that has different chefs and still create a wonderful, delicious, harmonious meal? And I think we have.
And this movie will be in theaters soon, but before that, you released it on iTunes. Why did you make that choice?
That was Apple. We wanted to do something interesting with our platform release. And so for the first time in history, a film was released in the iTunes store before its theatrical release. And we were just fortunate that they thought we would be the right fit. I'm platform agnostic. I love to go to the movies. I like to sit down in that environment, and frankly, I don't think it can be replicated anywhere else. But there are a lot of people who either live in remote areas or sort of anchored to their home or office who prefer to consume things through their computer or on demand. And so we wanted to make it available for those folks too.
So after that iTunes release, you did do screenings in, 10 major cities, but there was a unique idea in play here, the pay what you want experience, where you let patrons pay anything from, $1 to $100?
A penny.
A penny.
As little as a penny to $100.
To $100, inspired by an idea from the book.
Exactly.
What did you learn from this experiment, and how much did people pay?
We learned that people, when given the opportunity to pay what they want, choose not to pay very much. And that's fine, and we know that. And what we weren't trying to create necessarily was a model to shake up the traditional ticket pricing model where there's a single price for everyone. Instead, we wanted to give people an opportunity to consume the film, and we wanted an opportunity for people to maybe show their displeasure with current pricing or to see a film that maybe they wouldn't have seen otherwise. And I think a lot of people had fun with it. People tended to pay the lower amounts more than the higher amounts, but the crowd reactions were fantastic. And I think if people feel like they're getting a good value, they go in with better expectations, and maybe they enjoy the experience even more. So we had great reactions in the festival circuit this summer, but I peeked in on the Pay What You Want screenings, and people loved this film. And I think it seems like a real bargain when you can pay a penny and see a film even before it comes out in theaters.
No kidding. So what do you hope people take away from the movie that they couldn't have gotten from the book?
Okay, that's really the most important question. This isn't an obviously cause-oriented film, but it is to me. I think if you look at the kind of approach that Stephen Levitt has taken to sociological phenomena and apply it to your everyday life, you can make better decisions. That's why I wanted more people to learn about Freakonomics. I think if you're a parent, you can become a better one. If you own a business like I do, I think you can learn things in Freakonomics that will help you be a better business person. I think our policymakers could learn a lot from Freakonomics and helping design programs that will be more effective maybe than some of the ones we have now. So I think in that way, it's an extremely important book, and I really wanted people to have the opportunity to learn about it in this way. So those were my 3 goals. I wanted to make a film that had a financial return so I could make more. I wanted a film that stood alone creatively, so people could look back and judge it just as an artistic piece of work and be pleased with it. And 3, I still want as many people as possible to learn about the great work that Steve Levitt and Stephen Dubner did in Freakonomics.
Great. Well, Chad Troutwine, thanks so much for joining us, and best of luck with Freakonomics.
Thank you.
And now shifting gears completely here, earlier Bob Orr sat down with Senior National Security Analyst Juan Zarate for this week's Flashpoints. Take a look.
If it's Wednesday, it's time once again for Flashpoints with our National Security Analyst Juan Zarate, who joins me here at the desk. Juan, again, another busy menu today, and you're starting with the moratorium on settlements in the Middle East.
Yeah, the peace process is on the brink of collapse, in part because the Israelis have lifted the moratorium, the freeze on settlement construction, which had been in some ways a precondition for the face-to-face talks, and which the Palestinians and, frankly, the Americans had made a central issue in terms of building trust between the parties. The good news here, Bob, is that Abu Abbas, the leader of the Palestinians, hasn't broken off talks officially yet. He's taking time to reflect. He's taking counsel from the Americans and others not to walk away from the table. And he's going to consult with the Arab League to determine what steps should be taken. But I think, you know, the real problem here lies in the fact that the settlements were made a very public and central issue early on by the Obama administration, around which then the Palestinians had to rally and negotiate with. And so we're on the brink because the settlement issue has been made a central starting point for the talks.
Made negotiations very, very difficult. Some people would say even impossible.
I think that's right. And what you have now is the parties are going to have to rebuild trust in some way. There's going to have to be a face-saving way for Abbas to come back to the table because he'd promised to walk away if settlement construction was started again. There's also a question of whether or not American power is somehow diminished. There are a lot of folks in the region on the Palestinian side saying we can't believe that the Americans weren't able to stop the Israelis from starting construction again. And so this is a kind of a two-step back step, and now George Mitchell is out there for the United States trying to make sure that the peace process doesn't come off the rails.
All right, and now we're revisiting a subject we've talked about before on Flashpoints, and that's the tension between Japan and China. What's the latest there?
Well, you said we'd have to come back to China, and we are, and we're going to do it again. Tension between Japan and China because of the seizure of a Chinese trawler, a Chinese fisherman who was in custody. He's now been released. But what's most important about this incident is that it revealed a number of tensions that are emerging in the region with China, and largely because China is flexing its muscles. China has claimed predominance in the South China Sea. They are disputing control over certain islands in the region. They, as part of this conflict with Japan, decided to stop export of rare earth minerals, which Japan needs for things like hybrid cars and wind turbines. And so in some ways, China has started to flex its muscles a bit. And the region, starting with Japan, is starting to chafe. And it's creating a reaction and a ripple effect that I think China maybe didn't expect.
And the key is what the reaction is going to be. I mean, that's what we have to watch for. How is Japan going to respond here?
Well, that's absolutely right. And though the fisherman has been returned to China, the tension is still there. It's still simmering. And what you have are countries in the region starting to look, frankly, to the United States as a counterpoint to China. You have the Vietnamese cozying up to the United States. We talked about that last time. The Malaysians as well, the Japanese and the South Koreans. And so, I think that the Chinese have sort of come out of the gates a little too early, flexing their muscles, because I think people are starting to see what that means, and they don't like it necessarily. And so that means a potential advantage for the United States to be a counterweight to China, but also it means that the countries in the region are going to have to evaluate how they deal with China on things like the economy, trade, as well as military relations.
Our next flashpoint actually is in New York, where a terrorism trial is opening, a very important trial. This is one of the accused embassy bombers back in 1998, I believe. This is a guy named Ahmed Gilani, a Tanzanian East African al-Qaeda member who was a key part of the East African embassy plots back in '98, hitting our embassies in Dar es Salaam and Nairobi. He was captured in Pakistan in 2004, was in CIA custody, then transferred to Guantanamo in 2006. What's interesting about this case is that it's about to get underway. They're in jury selection right now. What's also interesting is this is the test case for the Obama administration. This is a case in which they've taken a Gitmo high-value al-Qaeda detainee, put him back into the criminal justice system in New York, and it's a test case for both legal principles and politically whether or not the Obama administration is going to be able to send al-Qaeda folks into the criminal justice system and try them effectively. Could be a dry run for maybe the trial of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and some other high-profile al-Qaeda.
I think the Obama administration will want to portray this as just that. They've been very lucky and good in terms of getting some good rulings out of the court in terms of the Speedy Trial Act not applying, in terms of prior detention not affecting the legitimacy of the trial in a civilian court. And so there's been some very good rulings for the government on this. And I think the Obama administration is going to want to see a successful prosecution and then use that politically to support some of its future decisions.
And our last flashpoint is in Colombia, where I guess another FARC commander has been killed?
Yeah, one of the chief FARC commanders, in fact, the chief military commander of the Eastern Bloc, one of the longtime leaders of the FARC, FARC was killed recently by Colombian military forces. This is a gentleman by the name of Jose Briceño. That's his military nom de guerre. He's also known by the name of Mono Jojoy. This is a really bad guy. This is a guy who led a lot of the kidnappings that the FARC is notorious for. He was also part of the ring of FARC individuals who killed 3 Americans who were down in Colombia helping the UA Indians. It's a case I worked on when I was at the Justice Department. And so this guy has been on the radar screen for a long time. He's been a senior commander. And it's the latest in the line of leadership killings or degradation that the FARC has suffered. And they really are in trouble now because you're seeing not only are the numbers dwindling for the FARC, their momentum is down. They're under a lot of pressure from the Colombian government. And there are some hopes that perhaps there's a negotiated settlement out of this, or at some point the Colombian government can actually crush the FARC and make sure it's no longer a threat to their security.
And finally today we go back to the news of the day, and that is there are a lot of reports about some kind of nascent plot against European capitals that seems to be getting some traction. And this comes again from the Al-Qaeda Core Command in the Afghan-Pakistan region. Tell me what you know about this.
Well, this is a very serious plot that counterterrorism authorities, not just in the U.S. but in Europe, are taking very seriously. What we know about it is this. Authorities think that there is an Al-Qaeda central plot driven by the leadership in Western Pakistan to hit European capitals, soft targets, in Mumbai-style attacks. That is, with commando teams of some sort to hit these soft targets, perhaps tourist sites, perhaps hotels, to be a coordinated attack coming from Al-Qaeda. We don't know much more than that, but we know that the attacks and the plots are being taken very seriously, and we've seen reflections of this in Europe with heightened security in Paris and in London and concerns in Germany. And so this is a very real plot, still unclear, still sort of organic in information, but authorities are very seriously concerned about it.
The intelligence people that we've talked to describe this as a plot that is credible, but it lacks the specifics so that we don't really know what all the tentacles are, or how big it is, or how many operatives are in the field.
Absolutely right. I think, counterterrorism authorities and intelligence officials are always hungry for details. And so they're sifting through all their intelligence now to try to find details of this plot. But what's interesting about this is this comes at a time of sort of heightened threat concerns generally from a global perspective from Al-Qaeda, not just Al-Qaeda core, but perhaps out of Yemen, Somalia, or North Africa. But then you also have some specifics, more so than perhaps in prior periods. And so we know that Al-Qaeda is sending folks potentially to European capitals, trying to hit soft targets, trying to do this in a way that's similar to Mumbai, so they're not focusing necessarily on airliners as they've done in the past. And so this is more detail than counterterrorism officials sometimes do have. And so that's what's concerning them. And
that makes it worrisome.
It's
the
worrisome.
fact that you have some details is worrisome.
That's exactly right. But it also allows counterterrorism officials to take certain actions. That's why you've seen certain sites, metros, the Eiffel Tower, et cetera, guarded more carefully.
Well, this is still a developing story. We'll have to keep an eye on this one, too.
Absolutely.
Juan, thanks again.
Thank you, Bob.
And that's it for Washington Unplugged. Join us again tomorrow on CBSNews.com, and don't forget to join me every Tuesday with the New York Times' Jeff Zeleny and Politico's Kiki Ryan. I'm Jan Crawford. Have a great day.